My name is Natalie Bennett. I'm 36 years old, a pediatric nurse in Denver, and a single mom to two amazing kids. Most days, I'm too busy juggling hospital shifts and homework help to think much about anything else. But last Christmas, my entire world shifted. It started with a letter. Everyone believed my older sister Samantha was perfect. She had the looks, the wealth, the confidence that made her the star of every room she entered. As for me, I was the responsible one. The one who paid bills on time, showed up when needed, and stayed quiet when I was overlooked. But blood is blood, and no matter how many times my sister made me feel like I didn't belong, I kept showing up. Until the Christmas she invited me to Aspen and told me not to bring my children. Just you, Natalie. This is an adults-only retreat. You understand, I didn't... Not then, but I do now. That Christmas changed everything. Samantha's invitation arrived on thick ivory cardstock, engraved with gold foil like a wedding announcement. She was hosting a holiday gathering at her Aspen estate for close friends and family, and wanted me there. At first, I was flattered. Then I read the note attached in her handwriting. Please arrange childcare. This isn't the place for a chaos. By chaos, she meant Emma and Noah, my children, 11 and 8, the lights of my life. I reread her note twice, my stomach sinking further each time. She was ashamed of them, of me. For 15 years, I'd supported Samantha behind closed doors. When she couldn't make rent on her Soho apartment, I wired money. When she needed a down payment for her boutique, I co-signed the loan. And when her high-end fashion label began losing investors, I took out a second mortgage on our house just to cover her payroll, and I never told a soul. My kids thought Aunt Samantha was a fairy godmother. They didn't know she lived on borrowed time and my overdrawn checking account. I stood in our kitchen, the snow falling softly outside, the silence pressing in. I had a choice. Stay home, make excuses, and preserve Samantha's illusion, or go to Aspen with my children and see what would happen when the truth showed up uninvited. Spoiler alert, I chose the truth. And if you're watching this, you probably want to know what happened when I stepped into the lion's den wearing a consignment dress and dragging along two kids that weren't good enough for Samantha's perfect world. Let's just say, by the end of that night, Samantha wasn't the only one with secrets, and she definitely wasn't the one holding the power. Stick around, because this isn't just a story about sisters or holidays. It's about the price of loyalty, the illusion of perfection, and what happens when the quiet one finally says, enough. So before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to family? Did it cost you something? Or did it finally set you free? Now, let me take you back to the week before Christmas, when all I wanted was peace, and all I got was a front row seat to my sister's downfall. I grew up in El Paso, Texas. Dry heat, dusty roads, and the kind of sunsets that make you believe in something bigger. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. We weren't rich, but we were steady. Dad worked long hours as a mechanic, came home smelling like motor oil and grit. Mom taught elementary school and always had a crock-pot meal going, no matter how tight the bills got. It was a working-class home filled with love, discipline, and loud Sunday dinners. Simple, good. Then there was Samantha, 2 years older, louder, prettier, and born with a gravitational pull that made people orbit her. Even at 10, she could turn a PTA meeting into a stage. While I was organizing my school binders and helping Mom prep groceries, Samantha was sketching dress designs and stealing lipstick from the Walgreens down the street. Everyone said we were so close, but they didn't see the cracks. I was the quiet one. The grounded one. I followed rules, studied hard, took care of things. Samantha. She floated above the rules like they were optional, and somehow she never fell. We shared a bedroom until she moved out at 19. Twin beds with mismatched sheets. Mine was always made. Hers looked like a tornado hit it. She'd come home from her part-time job at the mall and tell wild stories about rich clients, fashion scouts, or how some guy promised to fly her to LA one day. "Dream big, Nat," she'd say, throwing her heels onto the floor. "You'll never make history playing it safe." I used to admire that fire in her. I thought maybe I was the one missing something, like I was too practical, too boring. But dreaming and delusion aren't the same thing. After high school, I stayed in state for college, got a nursing degree, started work at a pediatric clinic near Austin. Meanwhile, Samantha packed her bags, maxed out 3 credit cards, and headed for New York to build an empire. She called me 2 weeks later in tears. "Nat, I'm sleeping on someone's futon. Can you send $200 just until Friday?" I wired her $300. That was my grocery money. That was the start. For the next 10 years, she became a regular in my bank app history. Samantha rent, Samantha phone bill, Samantha emergency Uber from JFK. I kept a spreadsheet. I didn't mean to, it just added up. At first, I believed her. I wanted to believe her. She said she'd pay it all back once her clothing line took off. "We'll be millionaires, Nat, you'll see." Then came the social media persona. Suddenly, she was Samantha Blair. New name, new teeth, new brand. Her feed exploded with designer outfits, gala invites, blurry photos with D-list celebrities. Her captions dripped with humble brags. Manifested this life. Grateful. And yet every month, like clockwork, I'd get a new call. "Nat, I hate asking, but my card got declined and I'm with a potential investor. I promise this is the last time. I just need to close the deal and I always said yes. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my coworkers. I kept the shame to myself. Because how do you explain to people that you're bankrolling your sister's fantasy life while clipping coupons and hoping your 2008 Honda makes it one more winter? But the worst part? I hid it from my kids. Emma and Noah adored their Aunt Sam. She'd sweep into town once or twice a year, arms full of extravagant gifts, wearing sunglasses indoors and calling them little legends. They didn't know the PlayStation she gave Noah was purchased with money I sent to cover rent, or that the leather bag she gave me last Mother's Day probably came from a client she owed favors to. I never said a word. Because I didn't want to crush the illusion, for them, for me. Then, 2 years ago, I found out she'd taken out a personal loan in my name. She needed better credit history to launch a showroom in LA. The paperwork had my signature, forged. The email chain, created using a fake account. I confronted her. "You said you'd never cross that line." She didn't even flinch. "Don't be dramatic, Nat. I knew you'd help me if you understood what was at stake." What was at stake? Her image, her curated life, her lie. I didn't go to the police. I didn't even threaten to. I just froze. Cried into my steering wheel for 20 minutes outside of work and kept going. That's what I did. I kept going. Until the invitation. That ridiculous gold-foiled envelope that arrived 3 days before Thanksgiving, addressed in calligraphy like we were royalty. Inside was an invitation to Samantha's Aspen Christmas experience. 7 days in a private estate, catered meals, luxury spa access, private concerts, everything shiny and shallow. But on the note, she'd handwritten, "Just you. Please make arrangements for the kids." This isn't the place for chaos. Chaos. That's what she called my children. That's what she called the people I've sacrificed everything for. The people I'd walk through fire to protect. In that moment, it hit me like a sucker punch. She wasn't just ashamed of my circumstances. She was ashamed of me, of us. And finally, after 15 years of quiet compliance, I stopped making excuses. That's when I decided, if Samantha wanted a flawless Christmas in Aspen, she was going to get it, just not the kind she was expecting. I've driven through the Rocky Mountains dozens of times, but never like this. It was the week before Christmas. The roads were dusted with snow and flanked by pine trees dressed in frost, like they were standing guard over something sacred. Emma and Noah sat in the back seat, dressed in their new holiday outfits. Emma hummed quietly to a Christmas playlist on my phone. Noah was deep into a graphic novel, legs bouncing as he asked every few minutes how many more miles until Aspen. I told them this was a holiday adventure, a special treat with Aunt Samantha. I didn't tell them I was preparing for war. Packing had felt like planning for a performance. Not because I cared what anyone thought of me, but because I knew Samantha did. I couldn't show up in my work scrubs and discount boots. She'd make sure everyone noticed. So, I picked out a simple but elegant black dress I'd once worn to a hospital fundraising gala, polished my only pair of heels. I even borrowed a winter coat from my friend Rachel, cashmere blend, classic cut. It still had the tag hidden inside. Samantha's invite had come with an itinerary. Yes, an actual printed itinerary. Each day was broken down into themes: winter wonderland, welcome, champagne, snowshoe brunch, midnight cocoa with carols. Every hour accounted for like we were filming a commercial. It screamed curated perfection and control. We were an hour out from Aspen when my phone pinged. New message. From Samantha. Hey Nat, just checking you're still planning to come solo, right? No drama at the door, please. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. She really thought I'd back down. I didn't reply. As we pulled up to the private road leading to her estate, a man in a parka stepped out of a small security booth and waved us through, after checking our name against a printed guest list. That should have been my first real warning. This wasn't a holiday gathering. It was a social stage, and only the properly cast were allowed in. Samantha's house, or should I say, compound, rose in front of us like something out of Architectural Digest. Glass walls, a heated driveway free of snow, columns wrapped in twinkle lights. A 10-foot steel reindeer sculpture guarded the entryway like a luxury gatekeeper. Noah let out a low, "Whoa." Emma just whispered, "Is this where the Kardashians live?" "Close," I muttered. The valet didn't flinch when I handed over the keys to my well-loved Toyota. He offered a tight smile and a claim ticket, eyes darting quickly to the license plate before turning away, polite. Professional, just enough to let me know he noticed. The front door opened before we even rang the bell. Samantha stood there like a lifestyle magazine cover. White wool coat cinched at the waist, makeup flawless, blonde hair curled just enough to look effortless. Her eyes landed on the kids and flicked. I thought I made it clear. You did, I said calmly, stepping inside. And I made a different decision. Her jaw tightened, but there were people behind her, visible through the sprawling foyer waitstaff. A string quartet, some older man I recognized from her social media, a venture capitalist or a skincare CEO, maybe both. She couldn't cause a scene. Not yet. Samantha plastered on her best fake smile. Well then, let's not keep the magic waiting. She led us through the house like a tour guide. This is imported limestone. That painting is an original from a Barcelona artist I met at Basel. The catering's flown in from San Francisco, Emma whispered. Is she always like this? I gave her hand a squeeze. Only when people are watching. Our rooms were at the farthest end of the house, separate from the main guest suites. She called it the quiet wing. Translation: out of sight, out of mind. Inside, the decor was pristine but soulless. Not a single holiday decoration in the guest room, not even a sprig of mistletoe. It was cold, both literally and emotionally. Noah turned to me and said, "Mom, it smells like a dentist's office." I nearly laughed. After unpacking, I checked the itinerary again. Samantha had added an adults-only cocktail hour before dinner. No mention of children's activities, no mention of kids at all. Still, I dressed Emma in her beautiful blue velvet dress, brushed Noah's hair back, and straightened his tiny blazer. We weren't going to hide in some corner room like house guests in a Jane Austen novel. We were family. But the moment we entered the main room, the energy shifted. Guests were milling about with champagne flutes, dressed in coordinated holiday tones like they'd all been briefed by a stylist. Conversations buzzed around IPOs, vacation homes in Jackson Hole, and someone's latest Tesla customization. Samantha floated toward us like a drone in human form. "Natalie," she said sweetly, "you didn't get the note about the dress code?" I glanced down at my black cocktail dress. She smiled tightly. "Don't worry, you look comfortable." Then she looked at Emma and Noah and lowered her voice. "The kids might feel a little overwhelmed." "There's a media room downstairs. It's fully stocked. Maybe let them unwind there?" Noah clutched the ornament he'd made for her, a little star with glitter edges. "I made this for your tree," he said shyly. Samantha took it with 2 fingers as if it were wet. "Adorable," she said. "But this year's theme is Nordic minimalism, silver and white only. We'll keep this elsewhere." That was the first time I saw Emma's eyes narrow. She didn't cry, she didn't flinch, but her hand slipped into mine and I felt her squeeze, tight. It was a warning, a reminder. We weren't welcome here, not really. And Samantha could pretend all she wanted, but I saw it. So did my kids. She hadn't invited me for Christmas. She'd invited me as a prop, and that was her biggest mistake. If you've ever walked into a room and immediately felt like you didn't belong, then you know how I felt the moment Samantha opened the front door. It wasn't just the cold air that met us at the threshold, it was her. Sculpted smile, eyes that scanned us like luggage at airport security, and a tone so sugary it gave me a cavity. "Natalie," she said with faux delight, stretching out the syllables like they were coated in gold leaf. "You made it, and you brought everyone." I could see it then, the slight twitch at the corner of her eye. The way her hand gripped the doorknob just a little too tightly. She hadn't thought I'd actually bring the kids. She didn't believe I'd defy her precious image. "Oh, come on in," she said after a pause that lasted a beat too long. The entryway was lit like a jewelry store, every surface gleaming, polished to reflect her curated life. Behind her, a small crowd had already begun to gather. Waitstaff in tuxedos, a trio of musicians near the fireplace, and a few early guests sipping champagne as they took in the scenery. Samantha stepped aside, but not before muttering under her breath, "We'll talk later." I leaned in just slightly and replied, "Looking forward to it." As the kids and I stepped onto the marble floor, the warmth of the house did nothing to thaw the tension. Emma clutched the tin of cookies we'd baked, oatmeal with white chocolate chips, Samantha's favorite when we were kids. Noah held the ornament he'd made, clay shaped like a star, painted gold with red glitter. He'd worked on it all week. We followed Samantha into the great room where a 20-foot Christmas tree glowed in the corner. Not a single ornament looked handmade. Everything matched, crystal, silver, white ribbon. It was beautiful and entirely soulless. Guests began to turn their heads as we entered. A few offered polite smiles. Most just stared, their expressions unreadable. I could almost hear their thoughts. Who is she? Why is she here? Did Samantha really invite her? Samantha cleared her throat and made her grand introduction. "Everyone, this is my sister Natalie. She's a nurse in Texas. And these are her children, Emma and Noah." Her voice rose an octave on nurse and practically whispered Texas. Like I was a novelty item she wasn't quite sure where to place. The room offered a smattering of polite nods and distracted smiles before returning to their conversations. Emma looked up at me, uncertain. Noah reached for my hand. We were invisible. Samantha leaned in again. "Just keep them occupied, okay? There's a game room downstairs. The Andersons' nanny is there with their twins." I stared at her. They came as a family. Why can't we? Samantha sighed. Natalie, please, I need tonight to go smoothly. There are people here who are important. And we're not? She didn't answer. Instead, she plastered on her PR smile and floated back into the crowd, immediately locking arms with a tall man in a navy suit. I recognized him from Forbes. Real estate mogul, probably one of her potential investors. The kids and I stood there for a moment, in the middle of the room, like misplaced furniture. Mom, Noah whispered, are we allowed to be here? I dropped to one knee and looked him straight in the eye. You're allowed to be anywhere, buddy. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise. Emma gave a small nod, lips pressed into a line. She was old enough to understand exactly what was happening, and that broke my heart more than anything. One of the servers passed by with a tray of drinks. I took a glass of champagne and held it like armor. That night was full of moments like that, subtle slights, cold shoulders, forced pleasantries. Like when Samantha introduced me to one of her friends and said, Natalie and I are very different. I guess you could say I took the creative path while she took the practical one. Or when Noah dropped a napkin and a woman nearby whispered, oh dear, we don't usually have children at these sorts of gatherings. But the worst moment came later, when Emma finally worked up the courage to give Samantha the cookie tin. She approached her quietly while Samantha posed for a photo with her guests. Aunt Sam, we made these for you. Samantha glanced down, smiled without her eyes, and said, how thoughtful. Why don't you give them to Maria? She'll put them in the kitchen. Maria was the chef, not even the help's help. Emma nodded, blinking fast, and walked away. I watched the whole thing from across the room. I didn't step in, not yet. Because something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just a hurt sister anymore. I was a mother. And this wasn't just awkward, it was disrespectful, dismissive, deliberate. Samantha didn't just want to control the narrative. She wanted to erase ours entirely. So I waited. I smiled when necessary, I held my head high, but inside I was rewriting the ending. And Samantha? She had no idea that tonight, she was the one standing on thin ice. I wish I could say the betrayal came out of nowhere. That it hit me like a freight train, unexpected and unfair. But the truth is, the signs were always there, like cracks in a frozen lake you pretend aren't spreading. I just kept skating. It started the next morning, over coffee. Not the kind you brew in a chipped mug while folding laundry, no. This was French pressed, poured by a housekeeper in gloves, served in porcelain I wouldn't let my kids touch. Samantha was holding court in the sunroom, wearing silk pajamas and sipping from a monogrammed cup like it was part of her morning routine to look like royalty. I was on my second mug, sitting on the edge of a pristine white sofa like I didn't trust my jeans not to stain the cushions. That's when I overheard it. She was talking to one of her investors, a man in his 60s, sharp suit, sharper smile. He asked about the Aspen project, the one she'd been flaunting on social media. Samantha leaned in and said, "Don't worry, we're fully funded. I secured a private line of credit through Family Connections." I felt my stomach drop. Family Connections? My hands tightened around the coffee cup. I wanted to believe it meant something else. Maybe Charles, maybe a distant uncle, anyone but me. But I already knew. Deep down, I knew. After the meeting, I went back to our guest room and opened my banking app. It took less than a minute to confirm what I feared. She'd accessed my line of credit again. I'd frozen it 6 months earlier, after the forged signature incident. But somehow, she'd reopened it, under my name, with my social. A $25,000 wire transfer to a dummy LLC that traced back to a P.O. box in Brooklyn. A P.O. box Samantha once used for business correspondence. I sat there on the edge of the bed, the sounds of holiday jazz floating down the hallway, and felt the world tilt sideways. She'd done it again, not by accident, not in desperation, but with full knowledge that I wouldn't fight back, because for 15 years I never had. That afternoon, I asked one of the house staff where I could find Samantha's assistant, Kayla. She was 24, glued to her phone, and talked like a TED Talk on Adderall. I smiled politely and asked if she could help me get a copy of the itinerary. I said I was planning something special for the kids. "Oh, sure," she chirped. "I can email it to you. Do you want the investor packet too? Investor packet?" I blinked. "What investor packet?" "Oh, it's the one Samantha gave to the partners last night. The brand expansion pitch for Aspen and LA. You're on the list, aren't you?" My throat went dry. She handed me a leather-bound folder without a second thought and went back to scrolling. I took it to the guest room and opened it slowly, like it might explode. Inside, glossy pages, projections, fake testimonials, and my name. Initial funding secured through Natalie Bennett, senior partner, silent investor. I felt sick. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd made me part of the illusion. She'd used me to legitimize her pitch, to inflate her credibility, to sell herself as a self-made mogul supported by family capital. My stomach turned as I flipped through spreadsheets that detailed every loan, every wire I'd sent over the years, reframed not as lifelines but as business investments, carefully categorized, calculated, leveraged. She didn't just take my money. She repackaged my sacrifice as a resume builder. I closed the folder, hands shaking. I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't unknow it. That night, there was another cocktail hour. More gowns, more champagne, more toasts to Samantha's brilliance. She floated through the room like she owned it. And maybe, in her mind, she did. I stood by the fireplace, Emma beside me, Noah building a gingerbread house in the corner with a few other kids, someone finally allowed upstairs. Samantha sauntered over, glass in hand. "You've been quiet," she said, faux concern painted on her face. I looked her dead in the eye. "You lied to me, again." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered. "Whatever do you mean?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the investor packet. Her face drained faster than her champagne flute. "Natalie, save it," I said. "You used my name, my credit, my history. You built this entire fantasy on the foundation of my sacrifice, and now you're parading me around like your silent partner, the nurse from Texas who funds your empire?" She glanced around, suddenly aware we weren't alone. "Can we talk about this somewhere private?" "No," I said. "We're going to talk about it right here." Because I wasn't hiding anymore. And neither was she. The thing about castles made of glass, they don't shatter quietly. After I confronted Samantha that night, right there between the fireplace and the gilded bar cart, she did what she's always done. She denied, deflected, and then performed. She laughed it off like I'd misread the situation. "Oh, Nat, don't be so dramatic. It's just business. Everyone embellishes a little to get started." Except this wasn't a little. It was 15 years of emotional and financial manipulation. And it was my name, my identity, being paraded around like a resume bullet point. That's when Richard entered the picture, Richard Moreland. 40-something, tall, salt and pepper hair, smile like a campaign poster. He'd arrived late, but I recognized him instantly. Samantha's newest partner in every sense of the word. The Aspen Development Project. He was the real wallet behind it. His presence wasn't just about business. He was the crown jewel in her presentation. A man of influence, a man she needed to believe in her. He approached us with 2 glasses of wine and a warm, oblivious smile. "There you are," he said, handing one to Samantha. Then he turned to me. "You must be Natalie. She talks about you all the time." I looked at Samantha. She looked like she wanted the floor to open and swallow us both whole. "Oh, really?" I asked, taking a sip of my drink. "What she said? Richard chuckled. That you're her sister, of course, a nurse. Her biggest cheerleader. I didn't know you were also a silent investor. That's impressive. Boom. There it was, out of her mouth and into the world. I saw the panic flash across her face. Just for a second, but it was there. Did she also mention that I never agreed to invest in anything? I asked, casually. Or that she forged my name on a business credit line? Used my personal credit score to open accounts she had no intention of paying? The air went out of the room like someone had flipped a switch. Richard stared at her. She's joking, Samantha said quickly. Natalie has a flair for dramatics. I have documents, I said evenly, reaching into my purse. Bank records? Signatures. A packet your assistant gave me by accident. I'm sure she meant well. Samantha's hand went to her wine glass, her face flushed with rage or fear, maybe both. Richard took the folder from me. He didn't say a word, just walked away from us, flipping through the pages as he moved toward the dining room. Samantha hissed, "You are ruining everything." "No," I said. "You did that all on your own." She stared at me like I'd just betrayed her deepest secret, but she had it backward. This wasn't betrayal. This was justice. The fallout came fast. Within an hour, the whispers had started. Richard hadn't said much, but his face had told a whole story. Other guests began noticing the tension. Samantha disappeared twice, returning with eyes slightly red, trying to reclaim control of the narrative with louder laughs and longer stories. But the shine was gone. Her armor had cracks now. And people could see them. I slipped away from the crowd and wandered upstairs, needing air. That's when I bumped into Angela, the wife of one of the investors. She was kind, gracious, the kind of woman who wore wealth like a sweater, not a billboard. She asked if I was okay. I gave her the bare-bones version. My sister had used me as a financial prop for years, racked up debt in my name, and now built a fake empire off it. Angela didn't gasp. She didn't pity me. She nodded slowly and said something I'll never forget. "Honey, success without truth is just pressure in high heels. It always collapses. Always." Then she squeezed my arm and walked away. That's when I realized what had been bothering me all weekend. It wasn't just Samantha's lies, it was that her so-called success was never real, not the way we define it back home. Not the kind that means building something from scratch, paying your dues, doing the hard work no one sees. No, her success was a costume. Tailored, branded, and pinned together with borrowed credit and borrowed confidence. The funny thing is, she thought she was fooling everyone. She wasn't. Most people could tell something didn't add up. They just didn't care, until it started affecting them. Investors don't mind fiction as long as the money's real. But once the fantasy costs them something, that's when they walk. By morning, Richard was gone. His car wasn't in the driveway, his name was erased from the guest schedule, and Samantha, she didn't come out of her room until noon, wearing sunglasses indoors and blaming a migraine. No one bought it. Later that afternoon, I saw her by the window looking out at the snowy ridge. She didn't look glamorous or powerful. She looked tired, like a girl who had run so far from who she really was, she didn't remember how to get back. I stood next to her. She didn't speak, I didn't either. After a long silence, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I nodded. I believe that, but that didn't make it okay. Because the truth is, the damage was already done. To me, to my kids, to the idea that family meant something more than image. She turned to me, voice cracking. "I thought if I could just get one more deal, one more investor, then I could fix it all." "Fix what?" I asked. "Your reputation? Your lies? Or the fact that you burned every bridge to build a palace made of other people's trust?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because she knew the truth.
She'd known it for years, just like I had. Only difference was, I finally said it out loud. And once you name a lie, it stops having power. That was the moment I stopped feeling sorry for her and started feeling free. It was the kind of night that looks perfect on postcards, snowflakes drifting like confetti, pines wrapped in lights, a fire pit roaring against the chill. But perfection, like my sister's smile, was always surface level. Beneath it, sparks ready to ignite. It was the final night of Samantha's Aspen Christmas experience, as she so dramatically named it. The itinerary called it Intimate Reflections by Firelight. Translation: a hand-picked circle of socialites gathered around custom fleece throws, sipping hot toddies while trading curated anecdotes about their glorious lives. I stood on the outer edge of the gathering next to a log bench dusted with snow. Emma sat beside me, Noah curled up under a blanket near the fire with two other kids. Their laughter rang out as they toasted marshmallows, oblivious to the storm brewing behind the adults' teeth-whitened smiles. Samantha had just finished a long-winded story about a business mentor in Milan who saw something special in her when one of the guests, a venture capitalist from Dallas, asked how she secured her initial seed funding. There it was. The air tensed around her like a rubber band pulled taut. She hesitated. "Oh," she said breezily, "I have a silent investor. Family. Very private." I tilted my head, watching her play the part. Richard wasn't here to shield her anymore. His sudden departure the day before had left cracks in her polished exterior, but she was trying desperately to patch them with charm. The man laughed. "Private? That's rare these days. Must be someone who really believes in you." Samantha lifted her mug in mock toast. "She always has." That's when I stood up. Slowly, calmly, deliberately. Every head turned. I stepped toward the fire, the heat brushing my face, melting snowflakes on my coat as I met my sister's eyes. "I think," I said, "since we're being reflective, maybe it's time we tell the real story." Samantha's smile froze. "Natalie, not now." "No." I cut her off, my voice steady. "Now is perfect." The guests exchanged glances, some leaned forward, a few sat back, sensing drama. "My name's Natalie Bennett. I'm a pediatric nurse, single mom, from El Paso, Texas." I looked directly at the venture capitalist. "I am Samantha's silent investor, except I never signed up for it. I never agreed to fund this operation. I never agreed to have my credit, my name, or my savings used to build this fantasy." The fire cracked loudly as silence fell. "For 15 years, I continued, I sent money to this woman, my sister, because I thought I was helping family. Rent, credit cards, boutique leases, spa weekends disguised as business retreats." At first, she asked, then she just took, gasps, whispered, "Oh my gods." Eyes bouncing between Samantha and me like a tennis match no one saw coming. Samantha stood now too, her voice sharp, shaking. "Natalie, stop." "I have receipts," I said, holding up the folder I'd retrieved from the guest room. "Bank transfers, forged signatures, and this," I tapped the investor packet, "which names me as her financial backer. Without consent. That's not ambition, that's identity theft." Her face drained of color. "I know some of you here wrote checks based on that illusion," I added. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I'm here because the truth matters." One of the women, a former model turned wellness brand founder, looked at Samantha and asked, "Is this true?" Samantha opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "It got out of hand." I took a deep breath. My kids spent Christmas mornings with secondhand gifts because I was paying for her first-class flights. I've cleaned hospital floors after 12-hour shifts while she got facials in Bali, paid for with my emergency fund, and I stayed silent for years. I looked at the group, but mostly at her. until she told me my kids didn't belong, that we were chaos, that we'd ruin her brand. Samantha's eyes welled, but it was too late for tears. "I'm not chaos," I said. "I'm the cost, and I won't be hidden anymore." The fire popped, and for a moment, no one moved. Then Richard's friend, some finance guy with the emotional intelligence of a golden retriever, stood and muttered, "Damn." Another woman clapped. Lightly, awkwardly, like she wasn't sure if this was a scandal or a Netflix pilot. Samantha didn't speak. She turned and walked back toward the house, shoulders squared, heels crunching over the snow. The guests trickled after her, murmuring, avoiding eye contact. And me? I just stood there. The wind picked up, swirling embers into the air like sparks from a long overdue fire. Emma came over, slipping her hand into mine. "You okay, Mom?" I looked down at her, my girl. So bright, so brave. I am now. That night, the house was quiet. No music, no laughter, just the sound of a carefully constructed empire beginning to crumble. Samantha didn't speak to me again that evening, but I saw her from the hallway, sitting in the dark by the Christmas tree, the lights flickering across her face. For once, she looked human. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release, because this wasn't revenge. Not really. It was revelation. And freedom, when it finally arrives, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with truth, and the strength to say it out loud. The morning after the fire pit showdown, the house felt different, quieter, heavier. Like something had shifted in the foundation, something that couldn't be reset with candles and curated playlists. The guests moved like ghosts through the halls. Eyes down, voices low, no one daring to mention what had happened by the flames the night before. But it was there, in every sideways glance, every polite whisper that trailed off when I walked into a room. Samantha stayed in her bedroom until noon. She didn't join the catered brunch. Didn't check on the kids' activity schedule, didn't post a single thing to social media, which in her world was basically a public confession. I found her later that afternoon, slumped on the velvet chaise in her room. The blinds were drawn, casting thin lines of sunlight across her face. She was still wearing the silk pajamas from the night before, mascara smudged, hair in a tangle, and for the first time in years, she looked like my sister again. Not the CEO, not the influencer, not the brand. Just Samantha. She didn't hear me come in, or maybe she didn't care. "It's over," she whispered without looking up. I leaned against the door frame. "What is?" She slowly turned her head. Her eyes were puffy, lips cracked. "All of it. The partnerships." "The brand expansion. Richard. I checked my email this morning. He pulled his backing. So did Collins and Young. They CC'd their legal team." Her voice broke. "They all pulled out, Nat." Every single one. I stayed silent. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing to say. She looked at me, really looked at me, and something cracked open. "You don't understand what it's like," she said, voice rising. "I built this from nothing, from duct tape and charm and fake it till you make it." "I didn't have a roadmap, Natalie. I had a dream and bills and a face that had to stay pretty even when my whole life was falling apart." "You had me," I said softly, "for years. But you didn't want me beside you. You wanted me behind you, carrying it." She flinched. "I didn't mean to use you. You forged my name." "I panicked," she snapped. "The LA investor was threatening to pull out unless I could prove financial backing." "It was one signature, one time." "No," I said, stepping closer. "It was 1,000 little choices. One lie after another. One email, one invoice, one call where you asked for help but really meant save me again. And I did. Because I thought we were family. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd remember I existed when the lights came up." Tears spilled down her cheeks now, unrestrained. I was scared, she whispered. I thought if I stopped moving, if I told the truth, everything would collapse. Well, I said gently, you were right. She buried her face in her hands, and I stood there for a long moment watching the illusion dissolve. Later that evening, Samantha tried to make a public comeback. She emerged from her room wearing a muted gray sweater dress and no makeup, clearly a calculated look to appear vulnerable yet composed. A few remaining guests were in the sitting room, sipping wine and scrolling their phones. The catered dinner had been scaled down. The staff were quieter. Everyone was waiting. She cleared her throat. I owe you all an apology, she began, voice trembling just enough. There have been misunderstandings, missteps. I let ambition blind me, and I hurt someone I love in the process. No one interrupted. I take full responsibility, she continued. And I want to make it right with the investors, with the people who believed in me, and most of all, with my sister. Every eye turned to me. She walked over, stopping a few feet away. I used your name, she said. I lied about what I had and what I built. You gave, and I took. I justified it by telling myself you were stronger, more grounded, that you'd be fine, but the truth is I depended on that. I exploited it. The room was silent. A fire crackled in the hearth behind us, but no one moved. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I know that's not enough, but it's a start. I studied her. She looked smaller. Not physically, spiritually. Like the version of herself she'd built had finally deflated, leaving only what was real behind. And for the first time, she wasn't performing. She was just human. I believe you, I said. But that doesn't mean I trust you. Not yet. A few people shifted in their seats. One nodded silently. Samantha didn't flinch. She just nodded. I'll earn it if you'll let me. I turned to the room. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I just want the truth to matter more than the image, for all of us. No applause followed. No cinematic music, just a few quiet acknowledgments, a quiet reckoning. And that was enough. That night, I tucked Emma and Noah into bed in the guest room. They hadn't asked questions, but I knew they sensed everything. Kids are like that. They know when grown-ups are pretending. Are we going home tomorrow? Emma asked. Yeah, I said, but not just yet. Is Aunt Samantha in trouble? Noah asked, wide-eyed. She made some big mistakes, I replied. But now she's trying to fix them. Is she still family? Emma asked. I smiled. Always. But being family doesn't mean you let someone hurt you. It means you love them enough to tell the truth and step back when you need to. They nodded, and I knew they understood more than I ever expected. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, not angry, not heartbroken, just free. The kind of freedom that comes not from vengeance, but from clarity. The mask was off. And for once, Samantha wasn't the only one who'd changed. We left Aspen 2 days later. No dramatic exits. No goodbyes at the gate. Just 3 bags in the trunk of my car, 2 sleepy kids in the back seat, and a woman behind the wheel who finally knew how to stop carrying what wasn't hers. The drive back to El Paso was long and quiet, with stretches of snow-covered road that felt like blank pages. It was fitting, a clean slate, and for the first time in years, my mind wasn't spinning with what-ifs or should-Is. It was still, peaceful, and... When we got home, the kids ran inside like they'd been holding their breath for a week. Emma dove into her art supplies. Noah curled up on the couch with our dog, Bandit, and asked if we could decorate our own tree. Not perfect, but fun. We did. That same night, multicolored lights, handmade ornaments, one string of tinsel that wouldn't stay in place. It was messy and beautiful. And when I stood back and looked at it, I felt something crack wide open in my chest. Joy. Not the kind you fake in photos or post online with a filter, the kind that fills you up quietly and says, "You're okay now." In the weeks that followed, I started untangling the web. I called my bank, froze every account tied to Samantha's ventures, reported the forged signature, set up alerts, reclaimed my name. Then I sat down with a financial advisor, something I'd been too ashamed to do for years, and laid out everything, the debts, the loans, the bleeding. "You've been supporting 2 households on 1 income," she said, eyes wide. "That's not sustainable." "It's heroic, but it's not sustainable." For the first time, I didn't cry. I nodded. "Not anymore." I also called a therapist. Told her I needed help understanding how I got here, how I'd let someone I loved use me like a backup plan. We met weekly, diving deep into patterns I didn't realize I'd learned as a child, pleasing, fixing, sacrificing. I thought love meant always saying yes, I told her. She smiled gently. "Love means saying yes to yourself, too." That one sentence hit harder than anything Samantha ever said. So I started saying yes to myself. I cut back my hospital hours, just enough to breathe, to be present for Emma's science fair and Noah's baseball practices. I took a weekend off for the first time in years and drove the kids to a cabin in Ruidoso. No cell signal. No distractions, just snowball fights, burnt pancakes, and laughter echoing through pine trees. And slowly, we healed. The anxiety that used to sit in my chest like a second heartbeat began to fade. The resentment melted. Not because I forgot, but because I finally stopped carrying it. Samantha texted me a few times that first month. Nothing dramatic, no apologies reworded. Just updates. I'm selling the Aspen house. Working with a financial counselor. I got a job, real job, entry-level design at a boutique in Dallas. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just informed me. And that was enough. For now. Because I'd built boundaries. And I wasn't tearing them down for a sob story or a gift basket. One day, she mailed me a check. $5,000. In the memo line, "Not enough, but honest." I cashed it. Not because I needed the money, but because it was a start. A rare moment where Samantha did something hard without expecting applause. By spring, the kids and I were thriving. Emma got accepted into the advanced STEM program at school. Noah made the Little League All-Stars. I joined a hiking group, started sketching again, even went on a date with a history teacher from the middle school down the road. We hiked, talked, laughed. I didn't mention Samantha, he didn't ask, and it was enough. One night, after tucking the kids in, I sat alone on our little front porch, a cup of chamomile tea in hand, and watched the stars blink above Texas sky. It hit me then, this quiet moment, this breath, this peace. That's what I was always trying to buy for Samantha, security. Dignity, belonging, but those things aren't for sale. You build them, brick by brick, choice by choice. And I finally understood. You can't save someone who's using your lifeboat as a diving board. I still get messages from strangers online who saw the story unfold after it leaked in a local business blog. Some called me brave, others called me foolish, but most thanked me for standing up, for setting boundaries, for showing that even blood doesn't excuse betrayal. One woman wrote, "You helped me see that loyalty without limits is just self-erasure," and I cried when I read that, because she was right. So here I am, Natalie Bennett, pediatric nurse. Single mom, recovering people pleaser, fiercely imperfect, finally whole. I'm not wealthy, I don't live in a mansion, I don't host gala dinners or wear designer anything. But I have peace, I have pride, I have my kids looking at me and saying, "You didn't let her treat us that way." And that's worth more than any polished brand or investor pitch. That's real, that's mine. And I'll never give it up again. It arrived on a Tuesday. Tucked between a water bill and a grocery store flyer, the envelope was unremarkable. Plain white, no return address, just my name written in the kind of script I hadn't seen in months, Samantha's handwriting.
I held it for a moment, staring at the curves of each letter. She always had beautiful penmanship, even in high school when she was scribbling fake absence notes to excuse herself from gym class. I stood in my kitchen, coffee cooling on the counter, and opened the envelope slowly, cautiously, like it might be laced with one last emotional landmine. Inside was a check, $10,000. Folded neatly around it, a piece of stationery with the letterhead from a boutique design firm in Dallas. Handwritten, no salutation. This isn't enough, it'll never be enough, but it's a beginning. I got the job. I'm in the back room now, pinning seams and steaming dresses. But it's real. For the first time in years, it's real. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. I'm trying. S. I stood there in silence, the check trembling slightly in my hand. I should have felt relief or pride or even vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Because healing isn't linear, it doesn't come wrapped in apologies or compensation. It comes in hard conversations, in boundaries set and respected, in choosing not to open old wounds just because someone says please. But it was something. For the first time, Samantha wasn't asking for anything. She was offering. That weekend, I drove the check to my credit union and deposited it into the kids' college fund. I didn't even hesitate. The teller smiled. Nice surprise, huh? I gave a polite nod. If only she knew. Later that night, I told Emma and Noah about the check. I expected questions. Maybe even anger. But Emma just asked, "Does that mean she's better now?" And Noah, ever the realist, added, "Is she still not allowed to lie anymore?" I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that shakes loose tension you didn't know you were holding. She's working on it, I told them. We all are. Samantha started texting again. Sporadic, cautious, small updates. Photos of her new sewing machine, a snapshot of a dress she'd helped design. Once, a picture of a mug that said, "Fake it till you make it," with the caption, "Retired." She never asked for a response. She wasn't fishing for forgiveness, she was just keeping the line open, and I appreciated that. Somewhere along the way, we'd both stopped pretending. She was no longer the woman wrapped in luxury and lies, and I was no longer the sister standing in her shadow, waiting for a thank you that never came. We'd burned down the old version of our relationship. Now we were sifting through the ashes. In early spring, I got another envelope. This time there was no check, just a letter. I'm starting counseling next week. Financial and personal, both required by the company, but honestly, it's overdue. They're teaching us how to manage money without shame. How to tell the truth even when it's ugly. How to live without pretending. I told my therapist about you. About what I did. She asked why you didn't press charges. I said, because Natalie's the kind of person who never wanted to win. She just wanted me to stop losing. I was wrong for a long time. I see that now. You don't owe me anything. But I owe you everything. If you ever want to meet for coffee on me, I'd like to say it in person, no strings. No cameras, no spin, just me. Just you. And maybe eventually a new story. One we write together. S. I reread it 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I wanted to. And that was new. I haven't written back yet, not because I don't want to, but because I'm learning that timing matters. That some bridges take longer to rebuild than they did to burn. And that just because someone opens a door doesn't mean you have to walk through it immediately. Sometimes you pause at the threshold. And that's okay. Emma had a school project last week. Write about someone who inspires you. She chose me. Her teacher sent home a copy. It was stapled at the top and decorated with stars.
My mom is brave because she says no now. She is strong because she works hard and doesn't let people take her kindness for weakness. She loves me enough to teach me how to love myself. And she's my hero because she helped someone get better without getting smaller herself. I cried. Of course I did. Because that's what freedom sounds like, reflected back to you in the voice of a child you've raised to never shrink. So here we are. Two sisters. One story split down the middle by silence, stitched back together with truth. She's trying. I'm healing. And maybe someday we'll find our way to a place where laughter lives again. But for now,
This is enough, because the strongest stories don't end with revenge. They end with choice.
and I choose peace. If there's one thing this journey taught me, more than how to read a bank statement or say no without guilt, it's this. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors with locks. And you get to choose who has the key. For most of my life, I thought love meant sacrifice, that being a good sister meant showing up, saying yes, giving more, even when I had less. I believed that family loyalty required silence, that if I just kept helping, someday I'd be seen, valued, chosen. But what I've learned is, love without boundaries becomes servitude. When you keep giving to someone who never stops taking, you don't just lose money, you lose yourself. Your time, your energy, your voice. And when you finally stop, they call it betrayal, but it's not. It's survival, because self-respect isn't selfish. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship, family or otherwise. You can love someone deeply and still say, "This is where I end and you begin." You can forgive without forgetting. You can offer grace while protecting your peace. What Samantha taught me, through pain, through chaos, through hard-earned wisdom, is that image means nothing if your soul is bankrupt. That success measured by applause will never fill the silence when you're alone. That the people who love you for your honesty, not your highlight reel, are the ones worth keeping. I teach this to my kids now. I model it. I say, you can be kind and have boundaries. You can care and still say no. You don't have to burn yourself out to keep someone else warm. Because they're watching me. Not just how I love others, but how I love myself. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Protect your peace, guard your name, trust your gut. And never apologize for stepping out of someone else's illusion to stand in your own truth. Because when you do, you don't just set a boundary, you set yourself free. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? Maybe a sibling, a parent, a friend, a relationship that pushed too far for too long. What did it cost you? And more importantly, what did it give you back? Drop your story in the comments. Let's create a space where honesty is strength and boundaries are not shameful, they're sacred. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life narratives, and share it with someone who might need the reminder. Self-respect isn't mean, it's necessary.